let's get into this discussion now. And Major General Jeremy Vearey is a former MK cadre and bodyguard to Nelson Mandela. He recently made headlines, you'll recall, for his unceremonious dismissal as head of detectives in the Western Cape for what was seen as disrespectful social media posts, allegedly aimed at the National Commissioner of the Police, Tole. Well, his book, Into Dark Water, it basically narrates his personal experiences of the underworld, whether you talk gangsterism, policing, politics, and indeed criminality in the Western Cape. The book is also an intimate account of what it means to reach the highest ranks of policing, having been a revolutionary. Well, the former general speaks to me now from Cape Town. General, thank you very much for making the time to speak to us here. We really appreciate it. Let's start with your dismissal. This was at the end of May this year from the South African Police Service. I understand you are still fighting this. Where is that process now?
Okay, that dismissal, like I said, for the comments on Facebook, has been referred to what we call the Safety and Security Bargaining Council of the police. And it has been referred there because it was felt that the process, on the basis that the process of the actual dismissal and how they came to that decision was substantively unfair. Mm-hmm. And it therefore was referred, we want the right to refer to the SSPC. Yeah. That hearing has gone on and it is proceeding Monday now, tomorrow, and Tuesday for finalization. And then probably before the end of the month, we'll have clarity on the outcome of that matter.
So were your social media posts, in particular on Facebook, were those directed at the National Commissioner, Tole, for the record?
For the record, as I explained, if you look at all the posts, they contain declarative statements and questions. Declarative statements, elusively so stated, without condemnatory kind of statements in content. But they reflect on articles that were either in the News 24 or in Daily Maverick in particular, or the Burger in particular, where they wrote on content related to policing. So the comments, as I explained before, relate to my reflecting on the content of the articles. So whether or not they refer directly to the National Commissioner, the comments or not, that is a matter that the SSPC must decide on.
Okay. Let's then talk about this fight as you try to be reinstated. I understand that you've also had to go into hiding. Confirm for us if you are still in hiding, and do you fear for your life?
I think let's start firstly. I went into hiding in relation to, I've been under security and protection for the last 10 years. Okay? And it related to several high-profile trials I was involved in the investigation of, from Rashid Staghi being sentenced for rape for 15 years to Michael Boyson, serving multiple life sentences, something in the mid-90s that we finalized, to a current trial and several others against senior gang leaders and drug lords in the Western Cape. The latest one is one in which I am the chief racketeering witness on racketeering charges against Ralph Stansfield and associated allegedly with the 28 gangs, or leadership thereof, and 21 of his associates, including 2 police officers. So those are some of the issues that have cumulatively throughout resulted in specific threats. But the first threats actually involved the finding of a sniper's rifle and an AK-47 and the arrest of 2 people who planned to take me out close to the R300 highway as I was traveling, and they were arrested before they could actually execute that operation. Several threats afterwards involved in act mobbing, even at the provincial command center of the police outside that by 4 hitmen from the Americans gang. So there are several other threats that were more than just information, that actually resulted in concrete plans to take me out. And these threats were evaluated by crime intelligence, and consequently the decision was made for me about 10 years ago that I should be protected. So they are not related to they are cumulative, and they're a result of several other incidents together. So as one gangster claimed, the mark will be on my head permanently.
My goodness. All right. So once then you were dismissed from the police, your security detail was removed. Do you know who was instructed for this to happen?
Yeah, it was removed by the current provincial commissioner, Lieutenant General Patekile, and I understand that head office, after consultation, endorsed the removal of the decision. We took it to court because the threats on my life emanated from my working with the police, and secondly, because it continues to emanate from trials I have yet to testify in. There are many gang trials I will be testifying in. And it emanated from that, and therefore the threat still exists and is therefore still valid and hasn't been neutralized. And until such time as the court ordered.
Were you given any reasons, General, for the removal of your security?
No reasons at all. No reasons at all.
And
but
so
it has since, and so during what I'm trying to say, for the period until we won the decision in the High Court to have that protection, there was a few weeks afterwards where the police protection was inadequate according to and did not comply with the High Court instruction. And it's for that whole period, from there not being that, including the part of the period where it was still not in place, despite the court decision, that I was forced to apply once again to approach the court to get a decision on contempt of court against the South African Police Service, and after that matters were corrected and I was able to move back to my residence, where I am now covered with 24-hour protection and mobile protection.
All right, so that sounds good, that if you feel that you are adequately...
Just one particular thing I wanted to raise with you.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that, or there was a reference earlier, not while you were into, but prior to that, of myself being accused around the Kinnear matter. I want you to just correct that for you. In both investigations internally by Lieutenant General Zuma and by IPID in particular, I am nowhere an accused person in terms of responsibility related to Kinnear's death.
Yeah, okay.
Nowhere. I'm not even charged. In actual fact, in both matters, I was more of a witness than anything else.
Yes. All right. That's exactly what I actually want to explore, but we're going to talk about that after the break, and this has to do with the allegations that there was a failed protection around the life of the late Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear. We're going to discuss that in a moment because General Vearey seems to basically suggest that it's not just him who has been a target of police bosses, but alongside other generals who lead certain units within the police in the Western Cape. So that's what we're going to get into in a moment. This is Politics Unscripted. You're watching Politics Unscripted. We are in conversation with the dismissed Major General Jeremy Vearey, who headed up the detectives unit in the Western Cape. And before we went on that short break, we were talking or getting into the conversation around the assassination, because that's what it was, an assassination of Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear, who was part of the anti-gang unit in the Western Cape. General, let's come back into that execution of Lieutenant Colonel Kinnear. And you've already made mention that you were nowhere an accused person relating to why he was not protected despite threats that were known that existed for him to get police protection. But there has been a suggestion made, and this has been attributed to yourself, that there is an orchestrated strategy to get rid of Peter Jacobs, Andre Lincoln, and yourself. And this now relates to the murder of Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear, because at the time of his assassination in September last year, there was no police protection for him. Who was accused of not protecting him? Do you know?
Okay. I think the first thing is, when it comes to our policy in the organization, because protection of the nature required that I have and that a person like Kinnear was entitled to, is quite resource intensive. The decisions about that are made at a very high level in our organization. Can either be by our provincial commissioner, and in particular by our national commissioner. Now let me explain all the threat reports on us, and I want to come to the Kinnear matter. The Kinnear was part of one package of a single threat against me, who was identified, against him, against a Captain Jafter, who's working at the anti-gang unit, and against General Andre Lincoln. That threat had clearly been identified by crime intelligence as one that would involve either attempting to take us out by firearms, or in particular, it was mentioned hand grenades at our houses. Now, immediately after that report in September, about 2 weeks after that, less than 2 weeks after that, a person was arrested outside of Kinnear's house with a hand grenade. So it is not as if the information was something in the air that you hear one of that hasn't been verified. Subsequent events actually were there. We were also at a later stage told that our telephones are being monitored with the purpose of locating us possibly. So there was a lot of information available that required for those 4 individuals that a decision be made that they be protected around the clock. Okay. It was not guesswork. It was actually very specific and linked to specific role players in the organized crime world.
Who's responsible then for not protecting Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear?
As I said, the policy places a responsibility on the provincial commissioner and the national commissioner at the time. Now, at the time of the specific information we are referring to, there was an acting provincial commissioner, and he was the divisional commissioner for crime detection and intelligence. Not the divisional commissioner, sorry, the deputy national commissioner, the direct deputy to General Sitole, and that was the now deceased General Mfazi. So he was present in the Western Cape when the threat was made. Secondly, he did summons us to a meeting, and then early in the morning, after 5, cancelled that meeting. So nothing transpired in terms of wanting to engage us on that matter thereafter.
Okay. Let me ask this question. At the time of his execution, there is a belief, or there are suggestions being made that Charles Kinnear exposed a so-called rogue unit in the police's crime intelligence. Are you aware of such?
I am aware of that. In actual fact, he compiled a document. I had first sight of that document because he brought it to me. And I was part of the editing of that document. I advised him, given that no attention is being paid or something, nothing is materially happening around threats to his person and the allegations that he's making, that information, that the people who are involved in a threat against him and us are actually people who have links with certain crime intelligence figures. Now, the people that he mentioned from crime intelligence in that particular report were people who were part of a unit set up by and during General Jula's term as provincial commissioner. And that unit was functioned under the command of General Tio, who is head of crime intelligence in the Western Cape. Mm-hmm. And that unit was identified for all its members. And as a consequence of that, General Jacobs, who was then the national head of crime intelligence, marked on paper and in writing that that unit is a rogue unit and must be disbanded. And that instruction was given that they should be disbanded for that purpose. So this is the context within which Kinnear then wrote that particular report. Mm-hmm. I advised him that, look, send it to every single general at head office so that when nothing is being done, we have a record that each one of them had sight and was conscious of the detail of these threats.
Did he do that?
He did so. And one of the things is, I think the record of there being no adequate response speaks for itself with his death and assassination.
Let me ask you this direct question, sir. Do you believe that Charles Kinnear's assassination may have been orchestrated from that very rogue unit?
I do not want to, I'm a detective, so I do not speak on beliefs, I speak on facts, I do not speak on conjecture. But what I do want to say is what Kinnear described in that report about him being monitored, even domestically at his house, was so, because we verified it. Secondly, what he states about the individuals he mentions from crime intelligence, they exist and they did function as he described because we monitored them. Because we were disturbed by their relationship with underworld figures, including Nafis Modek and several others, Mr. Big, another personage in organized crime in the Western Cape. We were concerned about interventions made from within crime intelligence at the time Nafis Modek was arrested in a year before in Worcester on armed robbery allegations about the fact that they didn't even go through the cells. They weren't even charged. Their firearms weren't even seized for them, and the case was squashed. We were concerned that tied to that particular incident in Worcester, a year before the assassination, that Nafis Modek made a telephone call to a key general in detective services. It wasn't me in that position at that point in time, and to the head of crime intelligence. And immediately after that, some strange things transpired in the case, and it just did nothing that happened in that. All right. So if you're talking about, I'm putting the facts on the table that express the concerns that went into into why Kinnear felt the way he did and why I felt. And I agreed with everything that he said. Yeah.
General, I'm completely out of time. I need to put this to you, and can I ask for your very brief comment?
Okay.
At the very outset, when you advised the late Kinnear to, when he writes this report, he writes it to all the generals at head office. His eventual murder, execution style, who should take responsibility given that police bosses were made known? Who should take the ultimate responsibility for his murder?
The ultimate responsibility lies with the National Commissioner. They have the power to redistribute in a sustained manner resources to cover 24-hour inspections. It's not a thing that I can make. It's not a decision that General Lincoln could have made, although he tried. And he was told, the court team, he was told that you have no authority to do what you did. So it's two tiers in the organization. One is the provincial commissioner. At the time, the acting provincial commissioner, the provincial commissioner was General Makhabudi now, during some time. And before that, at the time when the threats came out where we all were identified as targets, during that specific time, General Mfazi was acting as a Deputy National Commissioner. He was here in this province deployed by the National Commissioner. So the people who should take responsibility is them.
General Vearey, unfortunately, I am unable to explore other topics, including the book that you recently wrote, so hopefully I can invite you back. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully we will continue this discussion in the near future. Jeremy Vearey is a former head of detectives in the Western Cape, and there you have it. The person who should take the ultimate responsibility for Lieutenant Charles Kinnear's murder is the National Police Commissioner himself, General Cassius Tole, because he was informed. Not my thoughts, these are the thoughts of Jeremy Vearey.